What this is the number one thing that your virtual exhibitors will get, which is a lot of leads. In fact, they'll get so many that you can even guarantee the number of leads that they'll get to their virtual booth. So part of the way I grew my show back in the day to 300 exhibitors was after my first event. Can't do it easily for your first event, but after your first event, you can actually guarantee the traffic they'll get to their booth. That's how good the measurement is. And in fact, my highest level sponsors, I guaranteed 1,000 unique leads into their booth. So that's the number one thing that they'll get. Now, as soon as people hear about 1,000 leads, they're like, quantity is great, but what about quality? And it turns out the quality is actually very good. Increasingly, C-level folks are coming into these virtual events because they often can't make it perhaps to every physical event they might want to. Their schedules are very busy, so dropping in for 30 minutes here, 45 minutes there, high quality, it's that because there's no deep engagement, that exhibitor might think it wasn't as qualified. What happens again is the virtual attendee comes into the virtual booth, and if they don't chat with the booth staffer, which most of them don't, the booth staffer is left with a feeling that that's not very qualified. But in fact, often they're very qualified. Marketers love this. The branding of a virtual booth is awesome. And in fact, for the show organizers in the room and online, the fact that the branding is such a big deal actually allows you to dip into new budgets at your customers. So you're normally, I'm sure, going after their physical event budget. The branding and the measurement is such that you can go after their online marketing budget, which is often increasing. So that's something that they should look forward to. The secret sauce, though, is the measurement. So within a virtual booth extension, you will find out everything about that individual. You'll find out what they filled out at registration. Not only their contact information, but what are they looking to buy, what's their role in the decision-making process, what's their time frame, really valuable stuff. Plus you'll get behavioral data about what they did in your booth. You'll find out how many times did they come in, what exactly did they look at, how long did they look at it for, and if they spoke with you via chat, you'll even have a transcript of that. So the measurement is a big deal because that leads to a better ability to convert that lead and know what they're interested in. All of that taken together, more leads, high quality leads, more data about them to convert them, maximizes your ROI, and that's what it's all about. Now, I mentioned before, it's not all peaches and cream. You need to prepare them for what to expect to exhibit virtually. An event is an event is an event. They need to worry about things like strategy and content, staffing, and you still need to follow up on those leads virtually. Now, it's made easier because you've got all that data, but you still need to do it. Now, that exhibitor seeing this list of things they need to do might be concerned, so you need to let them know that you're able to help them. And for you to be able to help them, you're probably going to need the help of some folks with experience. So get help for yourself, and then let your exhibitors know that they're going to have help with these things. I'm now happy to get to ask my Spanish friend Miguel a question. So Miguel, does your exhibitor understand that a virtual booth is not a web page?
Yeah, just firstly talking about what you said before is that it is important that there is no average expectations for a virtual trade show. I mean, it's not like sometimes the clients ask you, what can I expect in terms of numbers of engagement? And this is very different depending on the market effort of the event and also of the target audience. So you need to always be coherent with what you do beforehand. It's not like all the events have 100,000 attendees. That's not like that. And sometimes exhibitors think like that.
And I broke one of my own rules, which is to engage the audience. So I apologize for that. And so after each question, and get ready, because I'm hoping if somebody doesn't volunteer a question, by the way, I get to pick on somebody. So just keep that in mind. We're going to go to the in-room audience, and then I understand we have 100 Twitter questions lined up, and I only want you to ask the first one, if that's okay. But starting with the folks in the audience on the topic of setting exhibitor expectations with a virtual booth. Who has a question? Yes?
My question is, I know that a lot of the setting expectations will be in one-on-one conversations.
I'm going to have you say that because there's going to be so many people watching this in archive, they want to hear your question.
I know that a lot of the conversations around setting expectations will take place one-on-one, but I'm wondering if also there might be value in having webcasts for the whole audience of, these are the differences between an in-person and a virtual event. This is the preparation. This is the investment you'll need to make on your end to make it a success.
That's a great question, Christy, and you're of course correct. And you definitely want to not only be able to prepare to one-on-one, but that doesn't scale really well, right? At Freeman, we're helping large shows like National Association of Broadcasters and RSNA and National Retail Federation, American Heart, go virtual. And they have often over 1,000 exhibitors, so you can't expect the show organizer of Freeman to have too many one-on-one conversations. So webcast is a great way. So just as many of you use webcast for your first-time exhibitors, what a great way, using virtual, to reach a large number of prospects, or they've already committed, and not only letting them know what to expect, but letting them know how to execute that booth correctly, how to get it built, how to staff it, how to follow up. So it's a great point. In addition to webcasts, you can have other sort of self-service tools. And even after you deliver that webcast live, of course, you'd make it available archive so that as people come in. So that's a great question. Thank you so much. Is there any other questions in the audience about that topic? And did you want to pick somebody online who had a question about that or anything else?
So in terms of what's happening in Europe and the way that a very social group of people are approaching virtual platforms, what about that issue of exhibitor training? Are the organizers or hosts of virtual events prepared, or are they knowledgeable enough to train exhibitors and convert them, from the live experience, which is so different, to the virtual experience?
Well, that takes time, for sure. I mean, since the market is a bit younger than in the US, we are right now as vendors having to train the event organizers on how to use the platforms, how to teach the exhibitors how to use that. But it's just a 1 month, 2 month training process. After that, for the second events, for the next bunch of events organized, they're doing that themselves. So at the end, I think it's very easy to increase the market awareness and to increase the knowledge of the virtual events and capabilities for the events organizers. So this is working very, very fast in Europe too, and in many different countries. So, okay.
Wonderful, thanks. So Miguel, tell me, does your exhibitor understand that a virtual booth is not a web page?
Not always, I have to say. And this is a very important topic because we come across a lot with the situation that our customers tell us, okay, I have a very nice corporate page. It took me a lot of money to make it, so now I have a virtual booth. I just want to have like 10 different links that go to different pages of my corporate site, and that is my engagement. And this is very wrong, because this is not what all this is about. We have also the opposite case. We have like clients that sell to us, okay, take just the contents from my webpage. They're already prepared for our website, and all the copies have been prepared for websites. So just copy and cut and paste them all in my stand, and that will make it. And I'm sorry to tell you, this is, again, not the case. A virtual booth and a virtual event is just about interaction. If not, there would be no reason for us to exist, because then we would have these very fancy HTML pages, very good for SEO. So why do we need these platforms? It's because we are integrating collaborative and interaction capabilities. So interaction is a must, and it must be very easy to see as attendee that there are people manning the booth, that there are call to actions like, talk to me here, or I'm very happy you just came by my stand, can I help you? So you need to be very proactive as exhibitor, greeting everybody who comes to your booth and starting conversations with them. Okay, this is something we try to do. This is not just even about the 3D, about the look and feel. It is just about pure interaction, about chatting, video conferencing, webinars. It's about having the feeling for the attendees and exhibitors that there is somebody on the other side of the screen. The same happens for webinars. A webinar without interaction is just a video, and it could be recorded like 2 weeks ago. The whole thing about this webinars is about them to be interactive. And for that, like we're trying to do today, is that you need to be opening all the time space for the audience to ask you questions. You cannot be talking like 1 hour on the web and expect anyone to listen to you. That will not happen. That will not happen today. I'm sorry for the European folks. But we need to be stopping all the time, trying to gather feedback. Are we doing well? Do you like what we're talking about? Should we change it? If not, this will not happen either. And then there's a thing that you cannot just take the plain text from your website and put them in a virtual booth and expect that a template will just make the magic. You need to customize your content and create tailored content for that virtual event. If you are presenting a product, then just create content for this product launch inside the event. If you are, showing some new project you're doing, then maybe create some 3D item and make some product placement like we're doing here with Intel or even with another this is an Italian company which is doing supplies. So really try to customize the whole experience for the attendees. Talking about these video contents, we're receiving a lot of videos from our exhibitors that are like 1 hour, 2 hours long, because they did that, they love that. This is very corporate, and a virtual audience would never engage longer than 5 minutes in a video. Even without interaction, that would not last more than 5 minutes. So try to create videos that are very engaging and very short and going directly to the point. Web is all about going very straight to the point of what you're trying to say. Because there is one thing, is that the virtual audiences multitask and get distracted. Actually, I think the multitask thing is a myth, at least for males. I mean, we cannot multitask. I mean, we just get distracted and we lose attention. So we really need to be very focused, short span, I'm sorry about that, like 5 minutes, and get straight to the point. So maybe is there any question from the audience about this topic or from the virtual audience? No? So then let's go to the next one. So John, how can exhibitors stand out from the crowd?
And I'm actually going to try to pull out maybe not a question, but a comment, because I'm going to drive engagement, and hopefully you'll appreciate that. So the last topic was, does your exhibitor understand that their booth is not just a web page? And that's actually a really big deal, because what happens is that a lot of folks have built their booths and just use documents and links, and that puts us to sleep. So who wants to share a best practice that they've used or seen of a booth that was really engaging, that was more than just documents and links? Anybody want to share an example of a really effective booth that was really engaging? Mr. Leahy in the back. Oh, wait, you got to use the mic. We have rules here, John. Total rule breaker.
I was recently at a virtual event, and one of the concepts that I'd seen that was really novel and new, and I've been working in virtual for a long time, was that the exhibitor used a group video chat inside of their booth. So as visitors came in, there's a best practice that we coach on how they should engage with those attendees and not scare them away, right? And what they did was they had their video chat inside of a pod, and as folks would come in, they would actually go on air, if you will, and they would welcome them, or welcome the multiple people in the booth, and invite them to ask them questions, to click on them, and to start a chat. And what that did was, instead of just having the docs and links that are there in every booth, it gave them an interactive, rich media experience without the visitor having to do anything at all. All they had to do was come into the booth. There was a booth staffer there, with their best makeup and hairdo, and they were there to answer questions and really be proactive. And it really drove the engagement and interactivity in a big way.
Wonderful. Thank you, John Leahy from InExpo, and a great example, a segue to what I'm going to talk about, which is how to help that exhibitor stand out. What we heard from his example, I think, was you need to engage, and the use of video, and to make it easy. So I think that's really important. Now, I'm assuming we don't have an online question, so I want to remind our audience online that we've got a hashtag here, hash VES210W, and that will have us in this room share questions. So please do your part, or I'll pick you out online and make you say something. Yes, thank you, Sheriff.
The word engagement in virtual is almost sounding like the word strategic in management. It's so overused, right? So help us, or help me understand, what would be a best practice to try and engage people? I mean, we talk about this stuff, but I'm not sure how we do that well in a virtual world.
That's a great question, so thank you. And I agree that it's overused, as is strategic, and yet if you look at the history of words that get overused, even though you kind of get tired of hearing and people probably throw it on loosely, they're getting overused for a reason. Strategy really matters. And we've not talked about this, but obviously you want to understand the strategy of your exhibitor so that you can then help them achieve that strategy, and different virtual exhibitors will have different strategies, hence the overuse. Engagement is as important in virtual because that's sort of the broken link. When we have drinks at the bar, hopefully later on today, we're going to have a face-to-face interaction. That's going to be deeply engaging, and at least for me, that will be very valuable. And that's what's missing in the virtual space. So best practices vary. The use of video is actually one of the ways to engage, right? The YouTube audience that we live in. Another thing, and we'll talk about this in a couple slides, is to be proactive. So if you're a booth staffer, don't wait for them to come to you. Go to them. And don't just hang out in your booth. Go to the lounge and engage there. So I would say, yes?
I have a Twitter question.
Okay. So I just want to make sure. So it's a deep topic, but there are ways to do it. Be proactive. Use video. And understand that it's hugely important that you need to engage your audience or nothing else matters. A question from Twitter?
Second. John, maybe I must just add something to the
Yes,
answer you
please.
just gave. I think this thing about engagement is just about adding or giving real value to your attendees and understand what they really want. And normally a physical or virtual event attendee wants to network. They want to meet other people that are equal or that have the same interests. So provide in your platform tools that really allow them to know who is there at the same time, like I am, who has the same interest that I have, make that easy, and make that at the end you end up having real interest in meetings, virtual, physically, who cares, but give them real value. So engagement should be translated to really giving value to the attendee.
So the question is, what type of materials do you provide to potential exhibitors to help them grasp the virtual event and then sell them on the concept?
Great question, and this is related to Christy's question a little bit. And what you want to do is come up with scalable solutions to overcome the objections that they have, to help them understand the best practices, to convince them to buy, to train them how to staff, and how to follow up. So many of the vendors and producers like ourselves have tools honed after 7 years and 1,700 events that help with every stage. In fact, there's one video I know called the More video, which is maximizing online results from exhibiting. And it's really great, and you can watch it anytime, day or night. And it helps that booth staffer understand, how do I build my booth? How do I staff my booth? How do I engage folks in my booth? And how do I follow up on the lead? So lots of tools, and I would say that people don't read anymore. So you can come up with a really big PDF, and only I will probably read it. So they need to be short videos, and those are more effective. Is there another question online?
There's a comment. Virtual events are a web page. It's how you build an engagement and interactivity for your online audience that makes it different.
I can agree on that even, but interaction is what matters. So.
Yeah, I don't, is there a name or address on that person?
You want to go after him?
Signed Anonymous on Twitter.
Exactly. So I would disagree, although it's certainly semantics at some point. And I think the point is that without engagement, it is just a website. And if it's just a website, you're done. With engagement, it's an event. So it really is the key, and I apologize for overusing it. So great question, Miguel. Thanks for asking. How can exhibitors stand out from the crowd? There's another question.
Sorry, Michelle?
Mike, please. Oh, another accent. How exciting.
Thanks, Michelle. I think one of the reasons that this is difficult for exhibitors is that in the real world, the first things they think about is, how do I make the stand bigger, and where do I put it on the floor? Before they even think about what's going to go on the stand, it's about size, and that's really what makes it stand out. So everything we talked about is actually what's on the stand. And I wonder if there's anything that you or anyone else has done that actually attracts people to the stand regardless of what's on it. How do we make it, visible on the platform so that people go there before they even know what's on the stand?
What a great question, because no matter how engaging it is once they get there, if they don't get there, it doesn't matter. And so the show organizer needs to attract people to the show, and we could talk for hours about how to do that, and it's very doable. But then how does that stand, as you would say, attract people to the stand? And there's lots of ways to do that. The show organizer can help with a easy-to-use interface that allows them to figure out which exhibitors they might want to visit and to be able to find them. And also the exhibitor can promote their presence at the event using viral tools, so that's very useful. Ironically, prizes, go figure. Prizes are outrageously effective at driving attendees to particular booths. At the event I started in 2004, we had prizes like trips to Tokyo and Monte Carlo and Vegas and big screen TVs and all sorts of things. When the iPod was hot, that was a big draw. And prizes are, of course, very effective at driving behavior, especially online. So there's lots of things that exhibitors can do to draw them in. But now let's say they're drawn in. How does that exhibitor stand out in other ways to make sure that they draw people in? So
The other way around, John, that way. That's,
I'm not sure that's the right.
go on. Go on.
One more?
Yes.
Should I click it one more time? Okay, thank you. That was interaction.
Don't do it, man.
Don't do it. Okay, so the question I think was, how do you stand out from the crowd? And back in the day, booths looked like this, and they were template-based, and they were easy for the show organizer and easy for the exhibitor. The problem was they weren't very brand-centric. Then, this is actually an example of something Freeman did to extend a booth we had at an event last year, and it's customized, where it actually looked almost exactly like our physical booth. So it's more brand-centric and in some ways more engaging. The problem is it's really hard to build a custom booth. The other problem is it's hard to navigate a custom booth. Because if I'm a virtual attendee and I go into this booth and it has one set of navigation, and then I go into another booth and has a different set, and what we know is that you need to keep it easy for these attendees or they'll tune out. So I'm excited to give you what might be a first glimpse at a new type of interface where it's really all about making it simple for the attendee and the exhibitor and engaging. And how do we make engaging? By bringing valuable content front and center. And this is actually a video that is in this virtual booth. This is another Freeman use of virtual, so we eat our own dog food, where at the great IAEE Expo in New Orleans, we had a virtual extension to our wonderful physical booth. And in that video, you'll see Deb Greif, who's with us here today physically, interviewing Chris Brown, who runs the NAB show, one of the largest physical, who's going virtual. And so this more engaging interface, bringing the content front and center, is one way to differentiate yourself and add value, keep them in the booth, and to engage them. Another way, of course, virtually, just like physically, content is king. And so having live programming throughout the day, the exhibitor not only having links and video and all that other stuff, but throughout the day, at 11:30 I've got this interview. At 2:30 I've got this scheduled group chat. That programming is key, whether it's really live or what I call simulive, where it appears live. In this case, we've got Deb Sexton, who's with us, the head of PCMA, at a particular time giving an interview, and that's really valuable. And it's not just an audio interview, it's a video interview. So live programming, video, very engaging. Another thing is you need to staff your booth. Can you imagine having a physical booth and not showing up? Well, unfortunately, a lot of virtual booths either don't get staffed at all, or they don't staff it enough or aggressively. So you need to staff the booth and then engage folks in chat, because collaboration is key. Now that chat can be group chat where a bunch of folks are chatting together, or it can be sort of one-to-one chat. So that is key and engaging. And then finally, the social media integration that the new tools allow you to do is a great way to keep people engaged within your booth, so that you could actually have your own hashtag about your own virtual presence at a virtual trade show extension. So that's my last slide on that, so I want to engage the audience. Who in the audience has a question about how to differentiate yourself from the other virtual exhibitors? Or a comment? Sir.
I like that idea of an exhibitor putting a video in their booth or a scheduled interview. If you go to if you're going to produce a webcast or something more lengthy than a video, does that then compete with the content of the show itself? And how far do you want to go as an exhibitor with scheduling things going on in your booth?
I would say that it's actually not a bad thing to compete with the education in the auditorium, because ultimately at physical events, what are we always talking about? How do I bring education to the trade show floor, right? So it's not the sessions that are in trouble, it's the trade show floor. And if we're not bringing people to that trade show floor, then everything's in jeopardy. So the more engaging your content, and if it's competing with the rest of the show, then that says you've done a great job. So I would, that'll be a good day when that's our problem. Right now, the virtual booths don't get much traffic. People don't stay very long unless there is this kind of live programming. But that is a good point. Is there an online question or comment on this topic?
It's a little off topic, but it goes back to the discussion about what is engagement. They're asking, in a face-to-face situation, when you've engaged your attendee. You can see their face. What's considered engagement online? Is it just when they drop off and you pick up that metric in the booth, or how do you know that you've actually engaged in the way you're thinking and talking about it?
Well, part of the problem, to Sheriff's point of overused terms, is they get used very broadly, and I would say that engagement means different things to different people. It might mean one thing to the exhibitor, that is they engage with my content, might mean another very different thing to the attendee. To me, engagement is really interaction, and if they're interacting with me or other people in my booth or my content in a meaningful way, then they're engaged. They're not just hitting and running. It's a little bit like at a physical show where there's those who sort of walk down the aisle, but if there's something going on within that physical booth, like a demo or some live programming, and there's a crowd, that engages me. I step in, I actually absorb, I might give back and ask questions. So I think engagement means different things to different people, but it's all about capturing their interest, having them get value from that interaction, and then benefiting, because you've got all these metrics about what that interaction was.
Because will the back-end metrics actually pick up how deep the engagement was? Because some people go to a virtual booth and say, hi, and then the guy will say, hi, can I help you? And you go, no, really just looking. Well, the metrics will pick that up as an engagement, am I right?
It will, in fact.
But it really isn't.
Well, it is and it isn't, right? And so the great thing about these platforms is not only do they capture all that data, but they can rank those leads based on their level of engagement, both with your content and your staff. So it's a great way to measure that engagement. So I'm going to move ahead here, running short on time because of the great interaction, which is
actually
good.
the same question that we're making from the Twitter audience, so we are pretty much aligned, I think. So please.
Wonderful. So Miguel, tell me, what needs to be measured to justify doing the event the next time?
I'm just going to say one thing. Engagement needs to be measured somehow. So the thing is, we have static metrics. We have been listening to static metrics for a long time, like how many attendees I have, how many visitors I have, registrations. These are web-based metrics that do not give us the sense of what is really going on inside of the event, as you were asking before. So this is good to have in a report, but I would like to talk a bit more about these engagement metrics, actually. So it's how many conversations were opened and how did they went. So the thing is about user satisfaction is, did the attendees got what they wanted? I think since we're talking that engagement is about giving real value, then we need to measure if this real value has been delivered or not to the attendees. So we need to measure how many comments there were on the stands. We need to measure how well or bad were the exhibitors rated because of their content or of their interaction capabilities. And all of this needs to be put in very easy to watch and to analyze reports. So we are working a lot, and many other vendors are doing that too, about not just giving plain numbers of what is going on in the events in terms of number of attendees and exhibitors and this kind of big numbers that anyone can even fake, but about what is happening really inside of the event and really making polls to the attendees to show, do you like that, do you like this other thing, give me feedback because I need to improve my platform, I need to improve the way I interact with you for the next time. There are more things that you can do, and related to what Greg just asked is how can I drive also traffic to one particular booth. We can measure and we can get more information about the audience. We can ask the audience, who are you? What do you want? What are you looking for here? And then with very easy matching algorithms, we can try to tell them, if you want that and you are like that, then most probably the best suited exhibitors for you are these ones. And we can give them affinity with other exhibitors or affinity with other attendees. And this is a very interesting metric too afterwards to see how this engagement, if the attendees that had a better affinity with exhibitors really connected or not. And this needs to happen during the event. We need to really push out that attendees that are kind of have affinity with a particular exhibitor, get to know them and get to meet them during the meeting. Another thing that exhibitors love and that you need to show them to ensure the success of your virtual events is benchmarking. They need to compare themselves with equals. See what other similar company did in other event. They need to see how well they performed against the other platinum companies in the show or the bronze companies. And that's very good for you as event organizer because then you set up a realistic measure of success, which is not in the overselling expectations from before, but you say, well, you were the first platinum here, so this is very good for you. Maybe you didn't have as many interactions as you expected, but you did very well considering this particular event. The other thing is not that I think that all the exhibitors look like this guy, but if you will need to give them feedback and you will need to give them real numbers so that they can believe that virtual events are here to stay and are very valid solutions. And sometimes it's about giving them numbers they can understand. They have in their physical events, like we were saying, attendees, conversations, things they can understand. But sometimes it's about teaching them that there are new metrics in web applications that they do not know about, like bounce rate. What does it mean that 30% of the attendees just left my stand after just clicking there, which is normal in a website, would not be normal in a physical trade show. So you need to teach them that there are things in the metrics that apply for a virtual trade show that will not apply for a physical trade show. So any questions regarding metrics in the audience or in the virtual audience? Yeah, please. Michelle.
Ladies and gentlemen, Deb Grudge.
So this kind of goes back to a little bit earlier, but so if you're talking to a room with associations and corporations that haven't done virtual, you talked about that, so we're going to launch it. We're going to bring this to our customers. So we're training our staffs to sell the booths. Then we're training our staffs to engage inside the virtual booths. There's a disconnect. That's a lot to expect, and I just want a little bit of advice on how, virtual being new to a large association or a large corporation, how are we putting all these pieces together? It sounds a little overwhelming. So can you talk a little bit about training internally? Who's doing that training?
Mm-hmm. In Europe, normally vendors are doing the training. In America, there is an ecosystem, so there are companies like Fremont that I think are filling this gap in the middle between vendor and exhibitor who are providing this training. But the same thing. You need to train the event managers and afterwards the exhibitors, not only how to first create the content and fill everything in the booth, which is where everybody puts the most of attention. But then the event goes suddenly live and nobody's prepared for this 100 people trying to talk to you and all these chat windows appearing and opening and I don't know how to answer. So these kind of things about how do we prepare for a live event is something we failed a lot as organization to try to teach the exhibitors. It's very good to do some kind of rehearsal so that you see that when you have one person visiting your booth, it's very easy to interact. When you have like 20, you need to have pre-prepared answers that you can just post there, that you need to have a lot of aids to help you with the interaction. So this is something very important that we are not doing so well today. So exhibitors learn on the fly. They need to learn during the event, which is quite bad. So I would try to advise you to really try to rehearse beforehand with all of your exhibitors to see them that it's not just one person interacting, not just testing the capability, but to trying to figure out how the real event is going to look like, what kind of questions are going to arise, and how you could answer them properly. Okay? Maybe you want to add something on that?
No, other than to ask if there's an online question.
There is another comment which could lead to a question. Virtual event planners spend months thinking through virtual engagement. Exhibitors don't. What do you think about that?
This is something we
Are
need to
they
change,
just
but this
unprepared?
happens. This happens a lot. And, well, not even that. They take so much even to upload one single photo as exhibitors. So you need to be pushing a lot to get all the content and to have them being trained and all this to happen. So we need, what is the sense of making an investment in a virtual booth if at the end you are not going to staff it and you are not going to put content on it? And this happens a lot, that they say, it's fancy, I do that, I pay for it, but then if you want to have some return on investment, you need to put some effort on it. And many times this effort is not being valued high enough. It's a lot of effort to build a virtual booth, and your exhibitors need to know that. If not, it's not going to work.
Is it lack of training or a misunderstanding on the part of the exhibitors about what you really have to do? Do they not understand how the platform works and how the engagement has to be?
I think it's more the second thing than the first one. I think this is all the presentation is about. It's like they need to understand what it is about. The training takes 1 hour. This is not the most difficult thing. It's about that they understand if they do not prepare, they don't have a plan, a strategy, and they prepare themselves beforehand, success will not happen.
Is the booth the only place that exhibitors can engage on a virtual event, in a virtual event?
A great question, because the title of the session was Ensuring Exhibitor and Sponsor Success, and we've really been talking about exhibitor success. And I think part of the reason is that the differentiation between sponsor and exhibitor is less so virtually than it is physically. It would be relatively rare to have a virtual sponsor who did not also have a virtual booth. And you can have, of course, different levels of sponsorship or exhibitorship. But in addition to the booth, you can have banners, you can have sponsored presentations, you can have your logo on the attendee-based marketing. So lots of ways to upsell those exhibitors and help address their strategic goals. So we have less than 5 minutes left, which means that it's been a very interactive session. I'm going to take just about 2 to talk about what to me is actually the most exciting opportunity. Because again, at Freeman, we're all about hybrid. And how do I create virtual extensions that complement my physical and really justify my overall event spend? And so this is a graph that we all are familiar with that really cries out for virtual extensions, because we have a lot of interest over a period of months around a physical event, yet that physical event lasts for 3 or 5 days. So the holy grail is how do I extend the value of that over time and to more people? And so here's a trade show shot physically. Nothing replaces face-to-face, but a virtual booth can help your face-to-face presence before, during, and after that physical. And I'm just going to talk about my hot topic over the past month, which is the idea of video booths as an extension after the event. So imagine you've got this great physical event and people are coming into the booths outside, but in the physical booth you have a sign that says, come visit my virtual extension in 2 weeks. And you hand out cards that say that, and the show promotes it. And then 2 weeks later, you have the virtual extension have a live day where the booths are staffed and you drive thousands of people into it, and there's new programming. And when I go into that virtual booth 2 weeks later, the first thing I see maybe is a video taken from the physical booth during the physical show, and it really gives me a flavor of what I missed. So for people who came to my physical booth, this becomes a great way 2 weeks later to re-engage with the content and the subject matter experts. In addition, if I went to that physical booth, but my 2 bosses didn't, this is what I invite them to. So if this becomes a new way for physical exhibitors to follow up on their leads more effectively, and it's all measured, and they can more effectively justify the ROI of their overall event spend, when we crack this nut, it's a very big deal. So I'm going to actually turn it over to you, and then if there's time at the end for final questions, but I want to give you a chance to talk about this last one.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we already talked a little bit about that. Is if you prepare beforehand, if you have the content, then what should be going on live? And this is how you should be looking like in a virtual event as exhibitor or as staffer, because you need to work a lot during the event. You need to be interacting with a lot of people at the same time. You really need to be multitasking. So you need to be able to generate all these kind of conversations that lead to something. I mean, it's not just about what are you doing here? Can I help you? No, thanks. That's it. It's how can I help you? What is your need? And then I have somebody in my staff that is able to answer that. So don't think about that just about salespeople using chat to talk about people. Think about experts really giving real advice to the people, because nobody wants to be talked in a real life about salespeople. Just, hey, come here, I'm going to show you, I'm going to sell you my car. This is the same for virtual, but in virtual they can't even close the window very easily, and it's not unpolite. So you will lose the audience very easily if you're just going on very aggressive sales tactics. So think about bringing experts on board, bringing people who really know about the subjects that matter to the attendees, not to the exhibitor, which is sometimes something very different, and generate results. By results, I mean generate meetings, generate sales demos, generate anything that is of value to your organization, not just conversations that lead to nothing. And at the same time, use during the event, we were talking about these days about taking your stand out even of the virtual trade show. Link to your stand from outside, link to your stand from your website, everything you do. So align your social media strategy during the event so that you drive much more traffic and attention, and make a lot of announcement during the event. Give everybody the impression that your staff is live, so that you are announcing something, that there is a new exciting chat or video chat or webinar with somebody, and do that all day long. Again, talking about what I was talking before, a virtual booth is not a web page. It cannot be static. It needs to be dynamic. And that means having people working during the day of the event a lot of time. We do international events. We are having people manning booths for 24 hours because the event moves with the time zone, which is pretty interesting, but at the same time pretty scary because we have to give support to events that last for 3 days in a row. So this needs to happen, and you need to have somebody there that knows what he's doing. After the event, just to keep it very briefly because I think we are running out of time, is you need to really analyze what happened as exhibitor. You need to have all the tools, reporting tools to know how much engagement there was there. But then you need to do something. And I'm receiving a lot of emails after virtual events about just sending a PDF with a demo or something like that are just automatically deleted, or they go even to my spam box automatically. So since you have so many tools to know what your attendees were or who they were, what they wanted, then please do not send them just an email that is just customizing the name on the email. Just try to make a contact that is really something that they would like to receive. Give them the call or the email they want to receive, not just a very standard email that makes no sense at all. So this would be a very important thing about that, is that you need to create a kind of community. The event does not be, the virtual event is going to be closed, but the virtual venue could be open to allow to much more interactions in the time. So try to transform all these leads you made, all these 1,000 leads that John was talking about, into maybe 100 people that really want to interact with you in the long term. And in that creation of the community is where you can give value to your attendees and to your organization. So just to sum up a bit of what we have been saying is that it's like in the real world, it's all about focusing on your attendees' needs. If you want to ensure the exhibitor's success, you need to ensure your attendee success. It is just about that, with the difference that attendee success may be something different for a virtual attendee than for a physical attendee. And I hope we were able to try to show you what these differences are. So any further questions?
So I think the last slide has our contact information, and we'll certainly be available after if you want to talk. If there's one last online question or no? Great. Well, thanks so much, and
Thank you very much.
Great luck.